Hey, I think it's live, guys.
Oh yeah, I saw it. I actually saw it on Twitter.
Hey, hey. Um, I'm thankful to have both of you here, Ande and Rishabh. We both like worked together for the longest time. I think like with Pyth for the last 1.5 years, and like with Socket even earlier than that. Like during our Earnwall days. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. Yeah, it's really excited to see lots of initiatives happening on your end, also on our end. So yeah, happy building, happy working together, happy about everything.
Yeah, same here. Very excited to be here and congrats for the big day, guys. It's really nice to see polynomial chain live finally. I think like you've been working on it for so long, and I saw Gotham's post today about it's not as easy as people think to launch a chain. So I guess building rollups is still hard.
But we have
Building
you
anything
guys,
is
to
hard,
make
sir.
it easier for us. Um,
Sorry.
we have you guys to make it easier and easier for us. Welcome to the second
Yeah.
edition of Liquidated. As always, this is going to be an open-ended discussion. Feel free to ask questions to each other, bounce off of each other's ideas, and drive the convo forward. But I think this is the great juncture to just start with some introductions. Andy, if you could kickstart with some intro from your side.
Sure. Yeah. Hey guys, I'm Andy. I'm help with the communication marketing, especially on the event wise for the Pyth Network. So basically, just a contributor from Pyth Data Association. I've been with Pyth for more than 2 years. So yeah, it's just very exciting to see Pyth starting from Solana and building cross chains, and right now we've been live on more than 50 blockchains. It's the same thing as seeing you guys are building first derivative tradings, and then right now you're building your hybrid chains, and specifically for derivatives. And yeah, it's just exciting to see this kind of initiatives, and congratulations.
Thank you, sir. And Rishabh, go ahead.
Hey everyone, I'm Rishabh. I'm one of the founders of Socket. Um, we Socket is the first chain abstraction protocol. We've been here for like quite some while, and we've been working on like a lot of stuff. And we recently announced our evolution into Socket 2.0 in some ways, which is this chain abstraction protocol that we're talking about. But quick background on us is like we've been in the space for like 3 years, like I mentioned. We today. Um, process like more than $1 billion of volume every single month, and work with like a lot of great L2s like yourself, and many others, and a lot of like wallets like MetaMask, Coinbase Wallet, Rainbow Wallet, and many applications like OpenSea, Zerion, Matcha, and many more. So yeah, really nice to have you be here, and very excited about the conversation today.
Yep.
Hey guys,
Go ahead, Gautam.
no worries.
Yeah. Thanks for the intro, Andy and Rishabh. I'll with Gautam.
Hi guys, I'm Gautam, one of the co-founders of Polynomial. At Polynomial, we are building a derivatives super scene. Uh, with the prime, so we've been building perps for the past year or so, and we just wanted to build like the best infrastructure L2 for making for perps trading in general, and that led us to making Polynomial chain. And it's gonna go live with the perp trading in like a few weeks time. So happy to be here with the two people from the two teams that like help us make it happen. And Salman is my co-founder. Maybe we can say a few words.
Hi guys. Great to be on this talk. It's my first time here, but I want to not have much pleasantries and go straight into it. Rishabh and Andy, what inspired you guys to start working on your respective projects? And for a very brief point, could you explain how we reached this particular point? It may be Socket with the first abstraction protocol, or Pyth doing all the data provider like the work that you guys do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was. Yeah,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go ahead. I can go.
Okay, sure. So yeah, for me personally, I started my interest in crypto after my first job in one of the tech giant, and it's basically TikTok. So yeah, I started to see lots of like exciting news happening around these topics, whether it's like, okay, Bitcoin's is getting a new high, or like some hackers are like extracting values from one of the protocols, and I feel like this industry is way interesting than what I was doing back then. So I started my interest like doing research on different projects, especially DeFi, because I started finance in my university, of course, like traditional financial stuff. So and gradually I get more and more knowledge on DeFi, on tradings, on derivatives, options, and all other kinds of on-chain stuff in around like 2018 or something. And then I started my own like career with one of the crypto media, doing research and writing stuff. And then I spotted Pyth. At the beginning, Pyth is just a financial oracle providing data on Solana ecosystem. So we keep like pushing data on Solana chain for DeFi in on Solana to use. And basically, what Pyth is working is basically from the upstream side, we get data providers. Those data providers are all first-party data owners. So we don't query data from those like data aggregators like CoinMarketCap or CoinGecko. We directly source this data from the root. So as you may see, like where trading happens on Binance, on OKX, or like where market makers are doing transactions on chain, they actually generate this kind of data, the price data. So we only source data from those creators of this data or data owners from their daily operations, and then we source this data to the network. After that, we do aggregation, and then we provide this data socket to the DeFi protocols to integrate. So that is way interesting than the legacy Oracle solutions, because like basically you cannot ensure data integrity or data security if you rely on third-party data providers or data owners. So I found this project really interesting, and maybe because like my financial background and do like TradFi stuff, so I know data is really valuable in any circumstances for finance. So I think like maybe it's time for me to join this kind of project to build with them. So I reached them, and then like they have me. So I started my work with Pyth Association for marketing and communication, especially for, let's say, community events, how we can get more people know about Pyth, how we can let more people know this kind of technology and this kind of solutions. You don't have to rely on the legacy Oracle solution, which is slow and maybe not accurate enough for high frequency tradings. And now I'm here. So yeah, that's kind of a story behind, and that's it.
Awesome. Awesome, Andy.
Do you come from TikTok, right? So it's more like an app where you serve like millions or billions of people, and then on the other side you are on Oracle, which is used by
Yeah,
10
yeah,
people, right?
yeah.
And
It's kind
what
of
do you
connected.
feel? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you feel like, on one side, like it's a fundamental thing about building stuff on chain, right? Do you feel like, I know Rishabh also, he used to work at a company which had also like millions of users daily even, and like right now you are in a, we basically have what, like 10 people, 20 people on chain. I mean, does it hurt you emotionally? Like, maybe nobody's using it, or like how do you think about it, right? Like
Yeah.
as an
Yeah,
individual.
that's pretty interesting, because when you do like TikTok or traditional like tech stuff or social media stuff, you easily got millions or even like billions of users from all over the world. So you got like billions of data, billions of tags for specifically for this kind of mechanism or model. So like every day you get very much content, and just the whole world is operating actively with billions of data. But when you come to the kind of DeFi industry, especially back to like 2018 or 2019, it was just like a very small game for only a specific group of people. So sometimes you only get like maybe 10 or 20 traders on your protocol or even less. And yeah, you may start to think like, what is the value behind why we're doing this if nobody's using this? So, but like one lesson from those traditional like tech giant is that they don't mind trying things, and they don't mind, like, let's say, keep developing your product, and product always comes first. So, like, if you only have like 10 users on your protocol or on your platform, then those 10 users are the treasury from on your end, and you have to, like, okay, listen to their feedbacks, and think about how you can make it better, or why my product is not like suitable for the mass, for the general public. So you started to iterate your product, and then you started to try different tasks and different angles, maybe different functions, and then you gradually build it, and until right now, maybe you can also get millions of users. So it's kind of a long experience, and try, like, do A/B testing, or try and test, and lots of mistakes and lots of progress, and until now you can build your own, like, empire for millions of users. So yeah, it's really interesting to start very early with an industry, and right now we are still early, but we've been seeing lots of progress in this industry. It's always exciting.
Rishabh,
Yeah,
like,
I think like
what about you?
how, yes.
What is your why, bro? Like, why are you building for 10 people, bro? And
Yeah.
like, how do you, like, I get, I mean, I've seen Socket from the beginning. I remember you guys launching as fund mover, and literally two people using it every day, to now, like, you guys are doing almost all the volume on the bridging side. And, like, I saw you guys grow, but, like, how do you, even now, like, I feel like it's still very less people, right? How do you convince yourself, like, as a person working in crypto, like, it's going to be something?
Uh, so I think like for me, I think of this as, so in Web two side of things, right? Like TikTok, or like any of these Amazon, or like whatever you kind of like talk about. It's like these startups, right? Um, that you talk about, and like you see all of these challenges and build through all of these
Amazon, like,
challenges, right?
whatever you.
I I see crypto as a startup in itself, right? Like the whole industry is in this startup phase right now. And then what we all are doing is basically start creating a startup within a startup, right? Like, so while there's like this famous thing, right? Like, like I'm creating like this startup within Amazon right now, which is this small company, or like a startup within Google right now, which is a small country and company which will grow and whatnot, right? But here, like my mental model, at least what I have in mind is like, um, it's a startup within, like, there's like this whole startup as an industry, and then we are all building like smaller startups to grow this industry as well as us ourselves, right? So for example, Polymarket is like a good example now, right? Like where in within the startup they kind of like created this niche thing in some ways, but it's not only growing in itself, right? Like it's also growing the space overall, right? Like where literally the whole, like, I mean, like, think about it, dude. Like potential presidents of America are talking about Polymarket today, right? Like about a crypto app, right? Like, I mean, like, could you have believed that this would be possible 2 years back? It's impossible almost, right? So that's how I. This is the story I tell myself every day to keep myself
Okay,
motivated.
And
and
If
maybe we want to listen to your story, but also let's back up a bit. Tell a story about Rishabh. Where are you from? What's your journey into crypto? How did you start Socket? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I started back in. I mean, I joined. I started out my, like, let's say, professional career in like a startup itself, right? So I was actually a part of the first unicorn from India. So it was an ad tech company, or it is an ad tech company rather. So when you play games like Subway Surfers, like the irritating ads that kind of like pop up. Those were the things that I did, right? Like those were the kind of ads that I showed. So I helped TikTok and Amazon and Uber and early all of these like Netflix and early e-commerce and early OTT and like early gaming apps kind of like acquire millions of users through what I was doing back in the day, right? And then from there I moved on to another startup where we were doing like food delivery and like hyper local delivery, and then that startup got acquired. So I always wanted to just be in like this small level teams and kind of like see this like, so for me like learning was like the main motivation, right? And as things grew, like I got to learn like a lot of stuff, and that was the main motivation. And while I was doing this, a lot of people, all of my like best friends and even like my flatmate who's now my co-founder, everyone around me was in crypto. So I was like, okay, I'm like a business person. Is there anything a business person can even do in crypto, or is it everything for devs, you know? And from there I started reading more on what I could. And I think like for me, what really stood out was, for example, the power of smart contracts, right? Like I think like that is the most insane thing ever for me, right? I think like that is like the standout thing for me as compared to, and not other things like decentralization or whatnot. Like all of them are like great properties, but just the fact that you can create like a bank which is literally on this like piece of code is insane to me, right? And from there, I built my conviction on crypto first, and from there I of course like started jamming with Weber, who's my co-founder, and eventually started off Socket.
So would you say that like so you both come from a non-technical background, right? And not as a dev, right? So like and from Rishabh's perspective, what he said is like smart contracts is what inspired you, right? Like you I assume that you both of you haven't written a smart contract yet. So it becomes more of like an ideological thing, right? And for you, like what is that ideology that you are kind of like getting out of it, right? Like you are you like looking for like determinism, like of that thing, or cutting out the middleman, or like do you think in the recent years like crypto has done anything in those because over the few years, like when I came, there were a lot of philosophical ideas, but some of them were not true, right? And you see almost once in a while things break down, right? And what do you think is like the things that are still true, and what are some things that you think are like no longer true in that aspect?
Yeah, that's such a deep question. And by the way, I can't believe Andy is like chugging Monster right now at 12 a.m. for his time. It's insane. But but yeah, I think for me, like hmm, I think like for me specifically, what stood out was just the logic of things, right? It's of course I don't read smart contracts and I can't possibly read smart contracts, right? But like one, it's that this is the logic that's basically there, and second, it has been verified by hopefully a lot of people already, basically, right? Like even if there are 10 people in crypto, all those 10 people or some of those 10 people have like already read through this, and if there's anything, there's like because you cannot hide behind anything, right? Like you can only hide behind code and docs, right? So ultimately, uh, if you have the right code in place and the docs in place, and then there are platforms like Twitter, for example, right? So if there's any discrepancy that happens, right, like anything can be pointed out by anyone, for example, right? So even if someone tries to kind of like hide or bullshit you, it will eventually kind of like surface itself, right? But overall, from like a more technical point of view, what stood out to me again was like just this transparency that all the logic, right? Like code is logic or code is law, in like a lot of ways, right? Like I think like that is a philosophy that I really loved, and what I saw was 100 years late down the line, every law in some sense could be code if we had enough things, right? Like I mean,
Mhm.
a company could be like a piece of code in itself, right? So I just went by that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I think on my end, because I'm not a tech guy, I'm not a dev, but I'm actually come from like a finance background. what I was educated are all things about regulations and how you can follow the instruction and follow the law to do finance and to do tradings or to list your company on the exchange. That's the education I had. But when I first spotted DeFi, I was very impressed by these kind of initiatives of like, and I started to use wallets, and I started to try DEX. I started to try like Volt to generate yield and to do stakings, and then to do like derivative tradings. And then I started to find out that maybe in the past like 100 years or 200 years of history of like traditional finance, it is always like you are the party and then you have a counterparty and there's intermediaries in the middle, whether it's like a bank or a broker or your asset manager. They are helping you to do things, and you have to custodize your assets to a specific agency so that they can help you to generate your benefits or your interest. But when I first started to try DeFi, then I started to see like, okay, there's another way to do things, and there's another way to do finance, and the way is way easier for everybody to use. Even like right now, not many people are trying this kind of thing, or even though until now the user experience is not uh, optimal as we expect, but the theory still holds, right? So especially for those like maybe not very developed financial market, when you want to deposit your money into a bank, you have to, even though in the digital era everything you can do on mobile, but you have to sometimes run to the bank, and the bank will have weekends, the bank will have holidays. You cannot withdraw your money every time you want. You cannot do tradings. Maybe like, for example, I'm in Asia. If I want to trade like US stocks, I have to follow the hours of the US stock. Then I have to wake up at midnight and to do tradings. Maybe I have to check my mobile on Monday, uh, like when the US market is collapsing. So it's like lots of blogs that I think can be improved. And then right now we are building this kind of stuff in DeFi, or at least it is some like ideology DeFi is holding. And we are slowly getting to the spot, or we are slowly getting uh, to the world that we are expecting. So that's why it's still driving myself in building within this industry, or still believing like in the future it's gonna be bright and it's gonna be huge.
There has been like recently, like I saw a lot of tweets in the past few days, very bearish on DeFi at least. Like a lot of people were saying like, I remember like someone tweeting like, the biggest use case of Web3 is just DeFi, and and
Speculation.
all that kind of stuff. Yeah, a lot of no speculation.
Yeah.
And no, like a lot of like ETH is just used for DeFi and all those kind of stuff, right? And like for the past few years, I feel like DeFi has been getting a bad rep in some ways, right? And what do you think is the primary driver for it? Like, or, but I feel like in some ways, both of you, like the motivation to come in is kind of in a way DeFi also, right? Like, what do you think?
Sorry, what was the question again?
The question is, so like, in the recent times, like DeFi has been like kind of getting a bad rep, right? And in a way, like from the motivation for both of you to come on chain is in a way DeFi, right? Smart contracts, doing things on chain, right? And mostly like financial transactions. So like, do you think DeFi is dead, as they say, or is it more like DeFi, but people just don't want to call it DeFi?
I think overall, like finance or DeFi is like something you start with, right? Like because that's the most easiest, I would say, like concept to grasp while starting out. But then you see many more things kind of like popping up. You see many more use cases, right? But like the ultimate philosophy kind of still remains like behind smart contracts, right? And how like again, right, like code is law, right? Like it's literally like a game if you think about it, right? Like you have literally made a game out of everything, where everything is like a piece of code. And so in some sense, like you have gamified everything. So you can literally game it. And in some ways, if you think about it, hackers also game the smart contracts, right? Like there are these written rules, and if you can exploit it, you exploit it, right? Like you had these cheat codes when you were playing GTA back in the day, and they have like those cheat codes because it's ultimately code, and it's written to do what it is written to do, right? And so yeah, like I think smart contracts ultimately are like the biggest use case for me. DeFi is definitely one of the most prominent use cases in the real world as well, right? Like and it's like something that everyone is super familiar with, and so that's like one of the first use cases that is just much more intuitive to understand to start with.
Yeah, on the note of DeFi, I guess it's the perfect time to segue into what's new at Polynomial. We just launched yesterday, as as Gautham had mentioned. I want to go directly to Gautham, and could you talk a little bit more about our launch yesterday and how you see the liquidity layer powering Polynomial moving forward?
Yeah, yeah. So a bit of a backstory over here is like a few years. So a few years we've been building right on derivatives, and what we've realized over the past few years is the current like how. So we've Yeah, so for the past few years we've been building on derivatives, right? We started with like making structured products, and we made perps. And over a period of time, we are currently even the second biggest perp text on Optimism, and over I think we were the second biggest perp on chain fully also at some point. And during that time, we came to the realization that uh, we want to be the best, right? We were number second, you were second for a while, and you were like, how do we become the best? And then at that time, we realized like what do we have right now cannot scale us to the place where we want to go. And our entire team like last year and like go booked a house somewhere in Bangalore during East India, and then we just started hacking up like 3 4 ways. Like we built like an L1, we built like an AMM, and then we built an L2 for just for trading perps. And that L2 is like what we ended up like doing as the final solution, and that is how we thought like we can scale perp trading on chain. And fundamentally like we couldn't do it without you guys, right? And so first thing is like how do we get like very accurate prices, and that like we got with. And how do we also make people bring in money from other chains without the people even realizing that there is chains. And that is like how we got socket. And so if you look at it, like we wanted to address few pain points that we had, and one of the major pain points was user experience, right? And I think Rishabh can explain a bit more about it. But we want to reach a centralized exchange user experience, and we want people to feel like they're trading on Binance. Because when you're trading very fast on, when you are like taking margin from one market, you're opening in a different place, and you're like doing it things very fast. You want things to happen like in a snap, and for that you need protocols to help you in UX. And for that, like we have Socket helping it out on that part, and maybe like Rishabh can like expand a bit on that part.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think like Gautam mentioned, right? Like the goal is where users kind of like can start using um, the amazing applications and like the amazing use cases on Polynomial without even kind of like realizing that they're like under multiple chains under the hood, right? Like so, I think like the goal is simply the user, no matter where they are, right? They could be on Arbitrum, Optimism, and so on and so forth. They have like funds across these different chains, but they're able to come in and start trading on Polynomial or start depositing or like start staking liquidity on Polynomial from anywhere, right? Like so, today how it works is any user can come in, basically deposit like a typical transaction where they let's say put the money into the vault, and now they have like these funds staked onto Polynomial, right? But soon it will kind of like evolve into like a much better sort of an experience. And I think like you guys are already using Zero Dev as well, and had the first episode with them as well. But where what will really happen is users will be able to use their funds even if they're like spread across five different chains, but they'll be able to kind of like with like one single signature, not even a transaction where you need gas, but with one single signature you can come in and start trading on Polynomial, and that's about it. So you can directly place a trade with your fund or with your 500 USDC with one single signature, despite that 500 USDC being present on like five different chains under the hood, right? Like, so that's the experience that we're coming up with very soon, and very excited to see that live there. You're on
How
mute,
has that
Salman.
transition been? Like, you guys started out as a bridge aggregator, and like at some particular point in time, you guys completely decided to kill that. Let's go kill bridges. Let's go abstract everything away. People should not know which chain they exist on. We need to completely, make the UX seamless over the whole area. I wanna get a little bit deeper into that, while also understanding that everyone knows UX is like the holy grail of what perp should probably fix, while at the same time one of the most overlooked liquidity problems is also liquidity challenges. And I want to understand how chain abstraction specifically helps for UX as well as liquidity fragmentation.
Yeah, so I think overall the reception has been super nice since we launched, right? Like, because I think like this is something that everyone had been thinking about, right? The number of chains are increasing and increasing, right? The here's like so here's what chain abstraction really means for us, right? If you think about today's world, right? uh, just take a swap between two different chains as an example, right? So someone swapping from OP to Arbitrum, right? Like, so someone has OP tokens and they want Arbitrum tokens. Just for this simple use case, they need to go through like multiple RPCs, they need to go through multiple steps, they need to kind of like go through two gas tokens. They need to think about not just one cost, but like the cost is broken down into gas fee on one chain, and then swap fee, and then like bridging fee, and then like gas fee on another chain, and then like swap fee on another chain. It's insane, right? Like the latency is similarly broken, and so on and so forth, right? And overall, what we really want to do in terms of chain abstraction is reduce the number of variables that any user needs to take care about, right? So for us, the UX kind of like boils down into how many things are people how many things do people need to care about? Is it 500 things like today, or is maybe just two or three the most important things for them, right? Like, which could change from user to user, right? Like, it could be cost or speed or security, whatever, right? Like, this is something that we were already doing with Bungie, right? So
Right.
instead of the user not being able to think and like getting just paralyzed by seeing 500 different things, how do we boil down the experience into these like specific things is basically what we are focusing on at Socket.
And while also doing it with the least amount of time, making it seem as if it's happening all at the same time on the shallow layer.
Exactly.
Essentially, in reducing latency. And when it comes to latency, I guess that's the perfect point to bring in Andy as well. I want to understand, Andy, what are the new things that you guys are working with Polynomial, as well as otherwise bringing down latency, or otherwise in the data Oracle side of things.
Yeah, yeah. I guess basically for Pyth, our aim is always like bring as lower latency as possible when providing data, and then how we can make the data more scalable when you guys, let's say you guys are building uh, derivative tradings on different chains, then you have to like query the price feeds on the specific chain so that you can build on top of them to create new markets, right? So how we can cover as many chains as possible, and also the assets when you guys want to start a market, maybe with lower liquidity or like not traded like massively. So whenever this kind of situation happens, are we able to support this asset from day one of listing, so that we can catch up sometimes for the hype or for the trading gala for the within the industry, right? So these kind of things are always our hit list to optimize. And right now, like I think what we are building bigger is basically onboarding as many high value data provider as possible to cover as many assets as possible. So that as you may see right now, we don't only have like crypto assets, we still have forex assets, we have commodities, we have US equities, and in the near future you may see we have indexes, and we have other kind of assets that you can build on top of them to create your new markets. That's something that we are preparing for the future DeFi space, because whenever you want to build something new, then the first thing is you have to look for infrastructure. And among all of those infras in DeFi, I think Oracle or data service is one of the most important ones, because you simply cannot build anything without data, right? So yeah, that's something that Pyth is continuously optimizing. And in terms of others, like we indeed we introduced a few other products besides price feeds. So if you can take a look, then there's like random number generator dedicated for like, okay, on-chain gambling stuff or betting stuff. As long as you need random number solution, then you have to find some like provider to do this. And also we have another kind of new initiative called Express Relay. So it is actually tackling the MEV stuff. Whenever you want, let's say, whenever you have a position that you need to liquidate, then originally you have to look for, or like the miners are taking responsible for like matching, and then they will take the value extracted from this process, because they need to, they will help you to sequence the whole liquidation process, and then they can take a few values from this. But using Express Relay, probably you can just make this deal or make this liquidation process within like you and the liquidator. So there's no miner involved. So basically, the value extracted by the miners can be paid back to the protocols and the users. So yeah, I mean, like lots of innovation, lots of like innovative products and features that we are building right now. But optimally, our goal is always about how to better empower these protocols. And especially like for you guys, we know you guys are building great, when you guys are having like top volumes in terms of like tradings and transactions. So uh, I mean, like your demand is our kind of driving force for working. So yeah, that's how our partnership comes. You have to tell us what you need, and then we will build something that on your demand.
So
Actually,
nowadays, oh, Rishabh.
no, go ahead. No, I was just saying, like, so I think like both Andy and me, like myself, kind of like come from the infra side of things, right? But like you guys are really the consumer apps that everyone is kind of like, waiting for or is talking about right now, right? So I'm just curious to know about your thoughts, right? Like on how you reached there and what you think about the whole infra side of things, right? Like how does it serve you? What are the things that you don't get today, right? And yeah, uh, curious to know your thoughts.
What do I don't get today? Uh, I would like more package stuff than going to one provider for every single thing. That is too much, I would say. There is, I mean, it's like that's kind of one of the things that we are trying to kind of solve also, but like it's more like we had to get a bridging provider, we need to get a paymaster, we need to get a account abstraction provider, an Oracle, a block explorer, a backup block explorer, an RPC, backup RPC. The list just goes on and on and on. And it just becomes like that is the harder part, I would say, like of building something, because there are way too many infrastructures at the moment. But I think like there are been like newer approaches where like it's more like the for the user at least it's just the input and the output, and the infra just figures it out. I think that is what you guys been doing with like the intent sort of thing, right? And I think that way is much cleaner, right? It's more like you're building something very bare minimum on the contract side, and then a complicated infrastructure just runs off chain, right? And I would say like Pit's approach is also very similar, right? They have this, I assume, large data centers calculating prices, finding average prices, and all happening off chain. And what do? You just push the price on chain, and it just gets verified and it's done. And when you look at their smart contract, it's beautiful. It's very small. It's very simple, and it's very easy to integrate also, right? And I think that is a good way for things to go more up in the future. Like as much as possible, like there should be lesser middlemen, because the more the people there are, the more the security risk for even the users also, right? And I think the users care a lot about it. And
Yeah,
I have a question. Like you talked about like adding price feeds, right? There is like a lot of meme coins happening. What is the point at which a meme coin you would say blessed by Pyth? You know, like you guys say like okay, the price is not crap anymore, and where you feel like, because I want to understand. I would say like you guys saying that this meme coin is good is kind of like saying like this token is kind of like no longer being manipulated by a small amount of people. So how would you like what? How do you guys determine that? Okay, this is now
Yeah, that's a
something.
great question. Yeah. So I think that I can kind of consolidate the two questions. So what we don't get today in terms of like an info provider, I think uh, based on our connections or conversations with most of the DeFi protocols right now, is that risk management is not something that everybody will keep in mind when building DeFi. Right now, we are putting our efforts or primary focus on, let's say, building the best user interface, which is not a problem at all. Or which is like we should do this for sure. But like for finance in general, risk is one of the most important factors for everybody, for the builders and for the traders and for the users, right? So you have to find a way to help your user understand the risk and manage the risk by and as you said, like meme coins, how we ensure the data security of those meme coins is one of the risk that we are trying to solve. And I think the policy is very simple from the Pyth price feed console side. So every new price feeds has to at least have three different data sources. So when we think about, okay, if the price feed council want to list a new price feed, whether it's meme coin or a new listed coin or other kind of tokens, what we have to do is like first we will see if there's demand. So for example, Polynomial is reaching the price feed council, saying like, hey guys, do you have the price feeds of a specific meme coin? And maybe some other like protocols come in and say ask the same thing like, hey guys, do you have this meme coin? Then we know there's demand, right? There's no point we building up something without any demand and then like just building up there without anyone using it. So first step is gonna be collecting demand or collecting request. If you guys have this kind of request, then you let us know. And second is, okay, we got this request, and then we will start to look for the data providers, and then we will basically reach to different data providers like, hey guys, are you having these data feeds available? Are you doing this data tradings? Are you doing these token tradings on your venues? And then we have to at least find 6 different sources providing this data. And if like let's say there's one DEX providing this meme coin data, and there's one market maker trading on that DEX providing this data, we treat these two as one data source because basically the data are pretty much the same, right? So you cannot divide these two data providers as two individual sources. They are doing the same thing. So we have to at least have 6 different data providers providing this price so that we can pass the first step of like, okay, listing this price feeds to the original aggregation model, and then we have to pass the conformance test to say, okay, so the 6 different data providers, if they are doing if their lifetime of providing these price feeds are, let's say, I can't remember the exact number, but maybe like over 99% of time, and then you pass the conformance test, and then you can be live, and then we can list this price feeds on the Pyth Network service site. So it's kind of a dynamic process of like first asking for demand, and then checking if the data is available, and then checking if the data is secure, and then we can list out this data. So yeah, I mean, risk management is always on top of our minds, and to in every aspect, to see securing data, securing latency, securing frequency, and securing how you guys are interact with those price feeds.
Rishabh, what do you think about like so when people bridge from one like what do you think about this paradigm of like having more complex off-chain compute like with like you guys are also moving towards it right with solvers and all those things. So like yeah, I think like what he's been talking about like risk and all those things right it's kind of applies to you guys also a lot and like and to build this massive network of data providers I understand that it's very hard how like what's your roadmap for that like how are you thinking about it.
Yeah. So for us, like there are two things that are happening, right? Like I think one is with so like I was talking about the variables early on, right? Like for us, chain abstraction is about reducing the number of variables that the users have to think or care about, right? To what they really, really care about the most, right? Like so here's the thing, right? Like from 500 to two variables, right? Like you basically boil things down to them. But under the hood, the fragmentation, the real on-chain fragmentation will always exist. Because really on chains, there are always like these 500 chains or 1,000 chains that will always exist. And there will be like these complexities that always exist, right? So the role that these agents kind of like play in this sort of a role, in this sort of a world is act as these like um, employers, right? So in some sense, like they act on behalf of apps to be able to complete the user's transactions, right? Like to be able to like handle these off-chain complexities or these fragmentation complexities on behalf of the user, right? And you're completely right, right? Like now, obviously, you cannot just delegate everything to these off-chain agents because that will obviously create risk. You have to control them in some way, right? And this control mechanism is exactly why we basically are releasing. So how we achieve chain abstraction is um, using this concept or by leveraging MOFA, which is modular order flow auctions, right? The simple way to think about MOFA is to how do we control these agents, right? Like how do we control these agents at a on-chain level, right? So for example, one, there are two parts to it, right? Like one is how do you ensure what they optimize for? For example, are they optimizing for cost or speed or whatever that is, right? That is one component, and the other component is how do you verify that they are doing uh, things what that are promised to you, right? Like, and that is basically where the M or modular settlement basically comes in, where you can choose how you want to configure your risk parameters. So we leave that choice to the application developers. Or like they can pass that choice to the users to be able to control how they to be able to like how they want to control these off-chain agents and what are these parameters of risks or security risks or cost or latency that they really want to opt into.
Do you can you draw a parallel for like such kind of action in the normal world like where
I mean,
does anything
in
come
some
in mind.
sense,
Yeah, can you
yeah, I mean, like
give
in some sense, right? Like when you're trading on like a centralized exchange, right? Like there are like these market makers who are actually fulfilling the trade for you, right? The centralized exchange as
mm,
a platform is just like in some sense is like just a matchmaker or a marketplace between you. So either it's a order book, but like it's basically like a marketplace between buy and sell orders in some sense, or in some cases, it's a marketplace between users and market makers, right? To kind of like complete this, right? So we basically want to go in this world where like these kind of like applications or decentralized world could be built on top of us. But what
so
we're really
basically
building
limit
is a
order.
marketplace in some sense, right? Like the marketplace could be an Uber or a food delivery app or anything else that you can imagine.
Do you think decentralized marketplaces are easier to build or like harder to build compared to like a centralized marketplace?
That's a good question. I think like it's easier to maintain transparency on both sides with decentralization or like with on-chain mechanics, right? The
Do you
filling
think
is a bit, yeah, sorry,
do
go
you
ahead.
think transparency leads to more adoption?
Transparency is so yeah, I mean like because you have to like you can trust the other party much more easily as compared to off-chain world where you have to trust the middleman. You don't have to trust the middleman here, basically.
Okay. So you think like because of trust that so you're saying like trust is the most important thing and decentralized worlds have the better trust. So because of that, marketplaces are far easier to build in a decentralized manner.
I mean, it's all basically contract. Every protocol today is a marketplace, right? Like, I mean,
Okay.
the
Yeah.
thing about crypto is everything turns into a marketplace, basically, right? So it's not necessarily trust, but like the best dynamics, right? Like that you come to, it's basically Aave is a marketplace, like Uniswap is a marketplace. Like every app, every protocol is basically a marketplace in some sense.
I mean, I could see it for financial marketplaces, but I am not very sure about like non-financial applications because there hasn't been. But at least on the financial sense, there are always like some places where like you do want some sense of this thing, right?
Could you
Like,
repeat the last part?
I mean, like centralized marketplaces are still the ones that are leading, right? If you look at it, right? Even in the crypto world, right? And if decentralized world is better, and it's been, I think like state of DeFi wise, like it's been like 3 years or 4 years. Like DeFi is kind of okay, but like none of the apps have like reached a level. Why do you think so?
Would you call Polymarket a DeFi app or not?
It is a DeFi, but is it that big? I don't know. Is it? It's
I
okay.
mean, it
It's
is
good
one
in
of
DeFi.
the, it's,
It's good
yeah,
in
I mean, like,
crypto.
it's the biggest app that we have, at least
I
right
mean,
now.
I mean,
Almost one of them.
the way I think about it is more like Pyth and Socket powers people to make markets which get bigger even than like let's say your poly market or your stake. In this regard, like I was more curious about what is the end goal for a DeFi app like Polynomial or someone else in terms of like in your roadmap, maybe Socket or Pyth. Like, what's the end goal? How do you get to your vision end while working with us or people like us in the DeFi sense?
From our perspective, it's basically to make your lives easier, right? Like Gautam mentioned, there's like so much stuff that you guys need to think about. There's so much stuff your users need to think about, right? So for us, it's mainly like you guys focus on what you want to do the best, and you don't have to worry about everything else, right? Like we basically are here to kind of like abstract away all of this complexities for you and for your users so that the end interaction you own the users in like a lot of ways, right? And apps can build wherever they want.
okay. I guess thanks, guys. Thanks for taking the time. I think like we are
Maybe
about
running
time,
on the hard
and
stop.
thanks Andy from Pith for um, coming here. Any closing thoughts or?
Yeah, I enjoy the time. I enjoy the time with this kind of discussion. So, like originally, I asked if there's any agenda for today's like talk, and or like it's just Yuda, and then we agree like let's Yuda. So I think this is really the constructive way to talk about something and to brainstorm something without like preparing the in before. So I enjoy the moments with you guys. It's really helpful for thinking about a few things, and I really appreciate this opportunity. Congratulations again for the launch, and yeah, let's work together.
Rishabh, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having guys, and yeah, big congratulations for the launch. Really amazing having the conversation. And yeah, looking forward to another one soon.
Yes.
Great having you
Yeah,
guys
thanks.
on here. Thanks for taking the time, guys. See you on the
Thank
next
you.
one.
Have a nice day.
Take
Thank
care.
you. See you.
Bye.